Hello, everyone. Abbie here. I'm the host of Senior Savvy and of Tech Tuesday. And I wanted to let you know that Jada, are you there? Jada? Jada? Can we stop that? Can we stop it, please? I can't hear you. Come back.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm hopping on with Abbie live. I think we're. Abbie, do you just want to get into the pre-recording? We pre-recorded a really awesome video this morning, and I'll go ahead and play that.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. Okay, Jada, thank you. Bye-bye. Welcome to Tech Tuesday. My name is Abbie Ritchie, and you can find me here every Tuesday interviewing people who are engaged in age tech and making the life of your residents better and better and better. Now, before we get started and have our guests on, I want to go ahead and run the intro. I want to go ahead and welcome my guests to the show. We've got Charles Mann, who is the founder of Accushield. Charles, welcome to Tech Tuesday again. I'm so happy to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited about this opportunity to share a little bit about what we do, but then really moreover, some safety features. And we brought in an expert that you're about to meet on fire safety and some other emergency management priorities to communities.
Excellent. Yeah, let's go ahead and bring Stan the Fireman on. That's kind of his nickname. Stan, welcome to Tech Tuesday. Would you please introduce yourself? Give us a little bit of background on yourself so that our viewers know who you are.
Well, good morning, everyone. Stan Szpytek. I've been blessed with one of those nightmares of a last name, more consonants than vowels. And I had a wise old nursing home administrator years ago when I was still on the fire department and doing a little consulting on the side. She looked at me, she looked at my business card, and she said, "Yeah, I'll never be able to say that. You're just going to be Stan the Fireman." And it felt corny, but it wasn't too bad. So my clients and my associates, my colleagues and peers around the country find it simpler to refer to me as Stan the Fireman. 26 great years on the fire department in the Chicago area. I started young. I started at 16 years old back in 1977. So, okay, I just dated myself. But I was a kid in high school. The community that I lived in the southwest suburbs of the Chicago area, had a fire department, and I was able to become a cadet while still in high school. I kind of grew up through the ranks. Held all the ranks up through deputy fire chief and fire marshal within the community. I retired at the ripe old age of 42 years old. I did what all good Chicago area firefighters do when they retire. I moved to Mesa, Arizona. So that's where I live today with the rest of my family. But I didn't really retire. I still consider myself kind of a first responder, subject matter expert in my field of specialty, which is fire and life safety compliance, emergency preparedness. And even beyond that, I've kind of focused on a specific niche. I work primarily with healthcare facilities and senior living communities. Many of your sponsors, your associates, your viewers that are on our Tech Tuesday call today probably are my clients or associated with my clients. I work with the big ones, I work with the small ones. It's basically my role to be these communities' outsourced life safety and emergency preparedness expert. I train them, I put them through drills and exercises, I do mock life safety surveys of their facilities, I prepare them for the inevitable emergency, whether it's a fire, flood, earthquake, active shooter, and we just help build culture in these communities so that we can focus on the one thing that's most important, and that is the safety and well-being of our residents.
Absolutely. And I want to ask you, so what was your draw to senior living? It seems like we all have our stories about why we're drawn to helping older adults and helping their community. So tell us, please.
Well, I was lucky enough to live in kind of an affluent Chicago area. I didn't have a lot of business and industry. It was mostly bedrooms, churches, schools. And during my time on the fire department and in my capacity as a code enforcement official, I had 3 nursing homes that were built. I had one large life care or continuing care retirement community with a faith-based organization that was built. My mom actually lives there today. I had some memory care buildings, some other medical buildings. So I just kind of had this natural partnership with the executive directors, the administrators, and it wasn't all altruistic that I wanted to partner with these communities. Some might say it was kind of a selfish motive, but my number one priority as a fire chief or a company officer or even a firefighter was the safety of myself and my crew. And my perspective was I needed to engage these senior living communities, not to simply have a plan that was involved with 3 numbers, 911. I needed to make sure that when the fire starts, when the person falls, that the people at these communities, at the very least, weren't making the circumstances worse, but they were mitigating the situation so that they were taking positive action. So by the time that we arrive on the scene, the situation was under control. So I just had this natural connection with these types of facilities, and my business was kind of born by accident. It was a person who was an admissions director at a nursing home who then became the executive director at an assisted living facility. And she said, "Hey, Stan, the fireman, you know all that stuff that you used to do in my community as the fire marshal? You would train our people to use the fire extinguisher. You would help us with that big impending disaster that never happened. Everybody remembers Y2K. Maybe you're a little too young, Charles and Abbie, to remember Y2K, but we thought the sky was going to fall.
I
And
remember.
it was going to end.
Yeah, me too.
And
Maybe Jada, but yeah.
So I help these
Go ahead.
communities prepare for emergencies and disasters. And she said, "Can you come to my facility and help me train my staff?" And by accident, I had an entrepreneurial light bulb go off in my head. And the next thing I know, here I am in Mesa, Arizona, working with facilities around the country.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Charles, tell us, how did you come into contact with Stan the fireman?
I had heard about Stan. I can't remember who I was chatting with, but in this industry, there are certain people that are quote unquote experts, and I had heard about Stan, and then I read an article that had been out there that he had written, and it prompted me to reach out to him. One, to get to know him better, and two, to access some of that knowledge as we build our product offering. And so Stan and I have had a number of conversations, and we'll continue to have conversations this year about the ways in which we can sort of support, I think, his mission, which is safer senior living and safer resident care. And so, that's sort of how we have come to know each other. It's still a relatively new relationship, and we're excited about 2023 and really expounding on that relationship and really bringing things from a technology perspective to communities, to create that safer environment. So I'm excited about hearing a little bit about this next topic that Stan is quite the writer and really has a unique way of delivering information. So,
Are you talking about the article, Think Like an Incident Commander?
That
Okay.
stuck. So I'm excited to hear from Stan on that.
Yeah, Stan, tell us about that article, please.
Well, so much of my efforts and focus has been with the administrative or executive level of facilities. And I've worked with so many state associations across the country, in addition to being the president of my own company, Fire and Life Safety Incorporated, where providers engage me directly. I'm also the life safety and disaster planning consultant for the Arizona Healthcare Association, the California Association of Health Facilities, and the Utah Healthcare Association. I travel the country presenting at these conferences, and we always focus on the typical audience of said conferences. You know, it's leadership, it's the maintenance directors, it's environmental services, it's regional people. But when it gets right down to the brass tacks, the reality is when an emergency happens, who's going to really be at the facility? Considering that most happen on a weekend, on a holiday, after hours, um, we know that the administrator or executive director, management and leadership may be there, but who's always going to be there? We always know that the frontline staff is going to be at the facility. So the article that I wrote entitled Think Like an Incident Commander basically was trying to promote the fact that we can't just focus on our traditional leaders. Even myself, when I was a fire chief, if I was out of town on vacation, there were others within the chain of command that would have to take charge. But the reality is, and uh, the training that I do focuses on some frontline heroes that were first responders in incidents that happened in a blink of an eye, one of them including a devastating tornado that destroyed a nursing home in Arkansas about a year ago. And it was the on duty shift supervisor who was only certified as an LVN, but she had to take charge. She had to make decisions that saved lives. She thought like an incident commander. She didn't wait or try to call the owner of the facility or wait for someone to give her direction. She took charge. That's how we train our firefighters and law enforcement officers and all first responders. If you're first on the scene, you've got to think like an incident commander because you are the incident commander until, a higher authority or other resources get on the scene. So again, the general thrust of the article was we're all first responders. And when we're the first one to a resident who has fallen, a resident who's potentially eloped or left the property, the smell of smoke in the building or a report of an active shooter in the area, that person has to think like an incident commander and make some important decisions.
Oh gosh, I am just overwhelmed with ideas of everything that could go wrong. But I want to know from you about how many people do you train at one community?
You know, it's hard to quantify or keep count, but here's an example. I was at a beautiful community, Glencroft, in Glendale, Arizona, just the other day, and I did sessions. I feel like
Mhm.
I'm in the showroom. I did a session at 10:30, and I did a session at 1 o'clock. It was standing room only. I joke around with everybody. It was a 2 drink minimum, but I think one of the things that a successful person like myself, and there's plenty of us out there, we realize that we need to edutain our audience. We need to be anecdotal. We need to share real world stories. I show some video clips. And I also know that, we have to embrace the time, typically about an hour, and I've got to connect with the audience. And one of the things that I often promote without trying to be patronizing in any way to the care force that's out there that protect our seniors throughout the country is that the people that work in these skilled nursing facilities, long-term care communities, senior living facilities, and independent living communities, they're afflicted with a blessing and a curse. They are blessed by the fact that, unlike most other sectors of healthcare, they get a connection with their residents where, in fact, they love their residents. That's their blessing. And then I tell them that they're afflicted with a curse, especially when it comes to an emergency. And that curse is they love their residents. And sometimes they've got to make tough decisions about when to evacuate, initiate accountability, put out the fire or whatever. And when you've got that personal connection with the patient or the resident or the customer, it's sometimes a challenge, but I've seen time and time again people in this industry that I've grown a love for. They're just like our firefighters. Would you be surprised to know, Abbie, that 80% of our first responders, particularly firefighters in the United States, approximately 80%, are volunteers. They don't get paid to respond to these fires. They're communities, they're people just like you and Charles that have got a beeper on their belt. The siren sounds, and tragically, and you know what, I don't try to depress people, but I try to make a point. Two firefighters in Pennsylvania just last week lost their lives. searching a building looking for victims in a fire when a collapse occurred, and 2 beloved members of a community were gone in a blink of an eye. So it's all about being prepared, and that starts with our staff, but it also involves our residents.
I am just, again, overwhelmed with ideas of how much things can go wrong, how often. I'm in communities all the time, working one-on-one with people, and I know how hard it is to get people to go, right? And so I want to ask you, is there a certain type of personality that you look for, or maybe Charles would be looking for, to put on the team to make sure was there for the training? Or do you cover all your bases, you train everyone, like you said, in a large group?
Well, I'll respond and then I'll defer to Charles. I mean, it's an all hands on deck proposition. So we have to train everybody. But Charles, I think this is more in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
The one element of a community, and some communities that I work with have a team of 2, 3, or 4 or more. It's the people that are responsible for technology. It's our IT folks. It's our people that assist me with AV and production and so forth. And I think, this call was also designed to talk about how important technology is in the emergency preparedness dynamic.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, great. I'm glad that you brought that back, because I wanted to ask you, and I'll allow Charles to answer as well, how much technology has adopted and changed and evolved over the course of the time that you've been involved in senior living.
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, I think even in the last, each year, I think technology evolves. And every year that goes by, you take a look back and it's hard to believe where we are today versus is where we were 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago. I can remember when my father built an assisted living community in 1988. There were very few technology products that would help him in emergency situations. Yes, there was nurse call. Yes, there were fire detectors. And yes, there were sprinklers. That's where it ends, right? Now they have predictive technology, right? Things that can sense moisture, things that can sense heat, things that can sense, water levels. And, all of those things play into safer senior living. And we're in a better place now than we were when my father built those buildings. But I think at the end of the day, you asked a question, Abbie, about the types of individuals that take this sort of thing seriously. And the thing I really like about Stan, and you can tell that this is sort of ingrained in the fabric of the way he speaks and the way he writes, is the importance of the frontline worker. And, I think I'm guilty when I sell products sometimes into these healthcare environments that I'm very focused on the decision maker in that regard. When in all actuality, most of the time, my technology is used by CNA, right? Or used by an LPN, or used by some other maintenance worker. And I'm not really talking to them. And I think bringing into the fold those frontline workers is of the utmost importance. The good news is if you've known CNAs over the years, if you've worked in communities, there are CNAs that, in my opinion, are angels, because they have a really hard job and they really love it. And for some people, they would look at that job and think to themselves, I don't know how they do this every day. And they are truly, in many cases, the angels that walk among us. And they take care of our seniors that are similar to babies in some degree, right? As they age, if they have dementia, Alzheimer's, and those sort of things. And so, I really applaud Stan in his focus towards those frontline workers. I know that sort of veered off the original question of technology, but when we speak and when we do our installations, we want as many people there as possible, right? As many people that can interact with our system, because there's some features that are designed specific for them. And so, it's going to be interesting to see where we are in 5 to 10 years from now, and really. I think Stan and I are both in the camp of inviting technology into communities, into facilities, to create that safer environment. And so I think there's a lot coming down the pike, and we're here for it.
Yeah, I think, when I visit a community, and some of them have Accushield, a lot of them do, and some of them do not.
Mhm.
And it makes me think about, the ones that do not, how could they possibly connect with those visitors in case of an emergency, right? But the ones that do have Accushield, how important is it for Accushield to know who is on campus, or who's in the community during an emergency?
Yeah, Abbie, you nailed it, right? So one of our missions is helping operators know who's in the building, right? Whether it's a resident member, whether it's staff, visitors, families, friends, vendors, home health, hospice, right? Giving a very quick and very direct way to figure out in real time who's coming and going. And especially during an evacuation, let's say it's a fire, right? Where is that list? How do you know who's in the building? And where do you direct a first responder when they get there and they're starting to ask questions? And that's one of the things that we that we've developed technology around, is helping, whether it's a CNA, right, who's helping to evacuate, or an executive director or an administrator or a business office manager. How can we give them the information they need to provide that information to first responders and help? And so if you'll play the video, I'd love to just show that, walk you through it, and then I'd love to get Stan's thoughts on the importance of knowing who's in the building as well. So
awesome.
Sure. So I'll just talk through the video here. On our dashboard, there's an evacuation management part of that. And so this is really a list broken up between independent living, assisted living, memory care, but also your residents, your staff. And then you can very easily print a quick list of all of those individuals that are in the building at that point in time. So you can take that list, you can provide it to a first responder, you can begin to check it off as far as who's there and who's not there, who's signed out, because residents can use the kiosk to sign out, right? So you know that they're accounted for. And so that's the video. And very easy and very important for not only the executive director or that concierge at the front desk, but also that CNA that's on staff that's trying to help. So this provides just oversight as to who's coming and going. So Stan, would love to hear, Abbie, if you want to take it from here and ask that sort of next question.
Yeah, sure. So, Stan, what are your thoughts on a feature like that? And I'm just really curious because, having a list is paramount, right? Having it printed out for you, knowing who checked in when, I just think that is so very important to knowing who's in your community. What are your thoughts on that type of feature?
I think back to the days when I was on the fire department. I can't believe it, but in 2023, I'll be retired for 20 years already. And I think back to my community where my mom lives. It's an organization called Peace Village. And I used to have them talk about low tech. I would have them update weekly a census of residents in the building, put it in a canister, put it next to the fire alarm control panel, in the lobby next to each panel in each building. And of course, it was never kept up to date. It was pretty basic. It wasn't all that important. But what is important is accountability. So having close to real-time accountability, it's critical. Every incident commander, whether it's the captain that pulls up on the fire engine or ladder truck, whether it's the battalion chief who arrives in his chief's buggy, the first thing they're going to want to know is who's in the building. So having a system based on a reliable technology that can give me close to, if not an exact accounting of everyone in the building, that's gold. I mean, that's exactly what an incident commander needs. One of our top objectives. And if you know about incident command, and I'm sure that a few of your viewers do, they know that incident command is management by objective. We come up with a list of objectives when we get on the emergency scene. We need to extinguish the fire. We need to locate the missing resident. We need to change the environment of care, put in new air because there's a carbon monoxide leak. Whatever the circumstances might be, we come up with those objectives. And always, two objectives that are always paramount are safety of our residents, staff, visitors, and responding personnel, as well as accountability. Where's everybody at? I mean, technology on the fire department side of things has advanced where the fire chief no longer just has a radio in his or her hand, but they've got a computer in front of them. They've got an accountability system. Some departments have even gotten to the point where each responding firefighter has some type of identifier on them, kind of like a black box, so that you know where they are at all times, so we don't lose people. So as technology evolves with the visitor management, with the resident management, accountability systems, I think it's only going to enhance and improve quality of life in these senior living communities around the country.
Amazing, amazing. I am just so impressed. You both are talking about so many things I've never thought of. I will be totally frank with you. I have been in many buildings where the fire alarm goes off. Usually it's a test, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, not again. So this does happen. And if you could, Stan, if there are communities that want to beef up their emergency operations plan, what would your advice be to them?
You know, one of the first steps that they want to take is reach out to the trade associations, the state associations, whether it's an association affiliated with Leading Age, Argentum, the American Healthcare Association, other trusted trade groups. A lot of times, including those that I work with in Arizona, California, Utah, and others, they've got a ton of resources available at no cost on emergency preparedness, incident command system, accountability systems, all the processes and stuff that will support communities. I also work, like I said, directly with clients. I do work for I do work from coast to coast. Charles, you'll feel sorry for me. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you can't. I've even had to work in Hawaii a couple of times. So, you know, if you got a community out there, we can help you. But my company, Fire and Life Safety Incorporated, you know, comes in and, like I said earlier, we train your staff, we help you build culture, we even connect with the residents. And this is a point I wanted to make before the program ends. The residents are a critical component of your emergency operations plan. Many state regulatory agencies, particularly when it comes to assisted living and memory care units, they require you to make residents, at least in assisted living and independent living, they require you to make residents aware of the emergency plan. Sometimes they'll make you practice it,
Yes.
conduct a drill or an exercise. You know, one of the things that I do with many of my clients, again, Charles, some of them are your clients, is when I'm on property, if I'm there training the staff on incident command or doing an active shooter awareness training session with staff, I also meet with the residents. I usually do about I do about an hour fireside chat where I talk to them just about the basics, having some extra food and water in their unit if some type of emergency or disaster occurs, knowing where to go, where the muster areas are. But one of the most important things that we fail to communicate to our residents is if they ever evacuate their unit when it's on fire, they need to know to do one simple task, and that is close the door behind them. I just had a client facility in the Bay Area that suffered a significant fire, started in a residence apartment. According to the fire department, it was an overloaded power strip. These are the things that I look for when I do a mock survey. It started the fire, and when the residents safely evacuated, she failed to shut the door behind her, and the fire spread throughout the facility and impacted scores of people. So technology, staff, and our residents, they all need to be part of the emergency operation plan.
100%. You know, you mentioned the power strip, and I will tell you, some people don't know that they need to replace those power strips just about every 5 years.
Yep.
And they are overloaded and they are fire hazards. And if you've taken a good look at yours recently, you might see that it's yellowed and like it looks old, right? And if that's the case, it is time to replace it. They definitely improve in their technology. Enough of that, though. I want to get back and ask some final questions. So, how can people get in touch with you, Stan, to connect and set up an emergency preparedness plan?
Sure. My email address is pretty easy, stan@flsafety.org. My company is Fire and Life Safety Incorporated. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Follow Fire and Life Safety Inc. on LinkedIn. Or you know what? I will take your call directly, especially if you're an industry professional. My number, even though I'm in Arizona, like most of the Chicagoans that have moved to Arizona, I still maintain my Chicago area phone number. There it is on the screen. Call me, and I'd be happy to help you build that culture of safety and preparedness in your community.
I love it. And Charles, everyone knows you, but go ahead and tell us, if you would please, what's the best way for someone to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think the best way is to go to accushield.com and there's book a demo. There's a link there that you can put your information in and we'll reach out. So very easy. It's accushield.com. Or you can call 800-478-5085. It's 800-478-5085. So
that's not your direct number. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Stands, just as far as the one thing that I sort of failed to mention on the importance of staff engagement and really explaining to them why it's important to take fire drills seriously. And, you know, in Georgia, one of the requirements, the state requirements, was to do a fire drill in the middle of the night or early morning, I should say. And that's never a fun thing, right? That is very disrupting to the residents' sleep. But if you can get out in front of that and share with them why it's important, and here are the things that can happen during a fire, and we don't want that to happen. And so, when you do that and you do that effectively, your residents understand and they don't push back quite as much when you wake them up at 2 a.m. in the morning on a cold night to go outside and practice in case there is an emergency. So, agree with Stan on the education of staff is as important, as your front line and management in understanding protocol and those safety procedures.
Good times. 2 a.m. fire alarm. Yeah, I know. The safety first. That's what I always say. And Stan, any parting words for us for today?
Yeah, I love it that you guys obviously paid attention when Fireman Friendly came to school when you were in second and third or first grade, because I love that you can communicate the importance of these things, an errant power strip, disregarding a fire drill. When I get to the staff level at a facility like I just did the other day, and I'm going to actually do this afternoon at a beautiful assisted living community, I remind staff members that when the alarm sounds, when a call for help comes in, try to think completely opposite of what we know as our civil rights. And I know you're saying, what is this guy talking about? But we know that under the Constitution, we're innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
When the fire alarm sounds, when there's a call for help, when an emergency might be evolving, I want you to think guilty until proven innocent. There's a fire in the building. Think about how big some of these communities are. Big, beautiful, sprawling campuses that I work with in Santa Barbara or Naples, Florida. Just because you don't see or smell anything doesn't mean that there's not an emergency. So guilty until proven innocent. Train your staff, develop a culture that we always react and err on the side of safety, if anything, so that in a true emergency, we're going to rise to the occasion and we're going to protect those people that you're given the privilege and the responsibility to protect.
I am fully inspired. Thank you so much. And I will not be dismissing those fire alarm drills the next time I'm in a community. So, well, thank you so much. I've learned a tremendous amount. I'm so very grateful that there are people like you who are looking out for community safety and protecting the people that we dearly love and care about. Well, guys, I want to thank you for being my guests today and want to really encourage you to continue doing amazing things that you're doing for residents out there. And for those folks who have joined us today, thank you. And thank you for your participation. I'll be back here next week, and I hope you all have an amazing holiday and a safe one as well. And with that, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye.